Hello everybody, it's VerticalSandwich, back with book reviews in my screen house. It's 3/4 done now. Alright, so today's book review is for this book right here, China Mieville, China Mieville's City in the City. Now, I'm assuming that's the pronunciation of the first name. Wikipedia gave me a pronunciation of the last name, but not of the first. If you're out there, Mr. Mieville, and I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize, but I do have nothing but good things to say about your book, so hopefully all is forgiven. This book it's the winner of the World Fantasy Award, the Arthur C. Clarke Award, and the Hugo Award for Best Novel. This book and the next book that I'm going to record today are both actually tied for the Hugo Award for Best Novel, which doesn't happen very often. So, this, I believe, tied with The Wind-Up Girl, and the other book I'm going to do, I believe, tied with Doomsday Book, both of which I have not read, although I probably own them both. I know I own Doomsday Book. Anyway, this is neither here nor there. So, City in the City. Let's read the back blurb. And you'll have to forgive my pronunciation. The location for this book is somewhere in like Eastern Europe, close to Turkey. And so they're kind of these realistic place names that I don't have the language background. So, when a murdered woman is found in the city of Betzel, somewhere at the edge of Europe, it looks to be a routine case for Inspector Theodor Borlu of the Extreme Crime Squad. To investigate, Borlu must travel from the decaying Betzel to its equal, rival, and intimate neighbor, the vibrant city of Elcoma. But this is a border crossing like no other, a journey as psychic as it is physical, a seeing of the unseen. With Elcoman detective Kusim Dat, Borlu is enmeshed in a sordid underworld of nationalists intent on destroying their neighboring city, and unificationists who dream of dissolving the two into one. As the detectives uncover the dead woman's secrets, they begin to suspect a truth that could cost them more than their lives. What stands against them are murderous powers in Betzel, and it could be Betzel, and Elcoma. And most terrifying of all, that which lies between these two cities. Okay, so before we read the excerpt inside, first off, Mieville writes books in several genres. He's like a genre jumper. He's a writer of what he apparently calls weird fiction, and he likes to write different novel books. This is his like police story novel. And that being said, it's kind of a shame because I haven't read his other work. So I can't tell you exactly what his other work is like or what you might think of him as a writer. I can only kind of speak to this book. And but we will talk a little bit a little later about kind of his pacing and his style of writing and how I feel about that and how I think it works for this book. And but I can't tell you if it works in other books or if it's different in other books. It may be. So, the premise of this book, and, well, maybe we should read the excerpt first, because the excerpt's always fun. It's always fun to read a sample of the writing. So, Inspector Borlu, even Theodore. Most of the press had always been polite and amenable to my suggestions about what they withhold. In the last few years, new, more salacious and aggressive papers had started, inspired and in some cases controlled by British or North American owners. It had been inevitable, and in truth our established local outlets were staid and to dull. What was troubling was less the trend to sensation, nor even the irritating behavior of the new press's young writers, but more their tendency to dutifully follow a script written before they were born. Brockhouse, who wrote for a weekly called Rajal, for example. Surely when he bothered me for facts he knew I would not give him. Surely when he attempted to bribe junior officers and sometimes succeeded, he did not have to say, as he tended to, "The public has a right to know." I did not even understand him the first time he said it. In Betz, the word right is polysemic enough to evade the peremptory meaning he intended. I had to mentally translate into English, in which I am passably fluent, to make sense of the phrase. His fidelity to the cliché transcended the necessity to communicate. Perhaps he would not be content until I snarled and called him a vulture, a ghoul. You know what I'm going to say, I told them. The stretch tape separated us. There'll be a press conference this afternoon at ECS Center. What time? my photograph was being taken. "You'll be informed, Petrus." Rockhouse said something that I ignored. As I turned, I saw past the edges of the estate to the end of Gunterstrasse, between the dirty brick buildings. Trash moved in the wind. It might be anywhere. An elderly woman was walking slowly away from me in a shambling sway. She turned her head and looked at me. I was struck by her motion, and I met her eyes. I wondered if she wanted to tell me something. In my glance, I took in her clothes, her way of walking, of holding herself, and looking. With a hard start, I realized that she was not on Gunterstrasse at all, and that I should not have seen her. Immediately and flustered, I looked away, and she did the same, with the same speed. I raised my head towards an aircraft on its final descent. When after some seconds I looked back up, unnoticing the old woman stepping heavily away, I looked carefully instead of at her in her foreign street, at the facades of the nearby and local Gunterstrasse, the depressed zone. So, the premise of the city and the city is that they're two cities that share the same space. Like, they share not the same space and are in different dimensions, or the same space and they're in different timelines. They just are in the same place. Two different cities. And so, in some places in the city, the areas crosshatch and they blend together. Some areas are exclusively one city or the other. Some areas are shared. And so the people have learned through a lifetime of living in the city to unsee what's in the other city, which boggles my mind. The premise of this book alone is a reason to read it, because Mieville just takes that premise and he just runs with it. Like, he never gives up. Like, it is absolute law to him that this thing he has set up is the way things are. And it's mind-boggling. It's the kind of thing where you just set the book down and take a deep breath and go, what am I even reading? It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And you start thinking about things like, what if I took the population of a city, like Chicago, and from birth I taught half of them to only see half the cities in Chicago, and I took the other half and taught them only to see the other half of the city in Chicago, and like I made them dress differently and act differently, and they spoke different languages, so they would know to imagine that the others aren't there. They would think they live in two different cities. I think it's very clear that's not what's going on here, although it may be open enough for interpretation. But it's magnificent. It's absolutely insane. Car accidents can happen between inhabitants of these two cities. And here's the thing, is there's an enforcement squad to stop people from interacting with the other city. And that enforcement squad is called the breach. And so what happens is if you look at somebody in the other city and you go, hey, you're in the other city, then these people will just appear out of nowhere and go, breach, breach, and grab you, and you disappear, like it disappear with you. It's insane. It was absolutely insane. So, what happens in this book is this guy is investigating a murder, and he finds out that the person who was murdered and dumped in his city lived in the other city, and it starts this whole thing about how there's an entire setup to keep these two cities separate, and somebody has taken that and kind of shattered it in this one crime. And while investigating this, he finds out, or he has to deal with the fact that there's a conspiracy theory that there's actually a third city, that there's a city in the spaces that isn't noticed because everybody inhabits one city or the other, but they don't know. You know, if there's an area that doesn't belong to them, they just assume it belongs to the other city. But there are areas that actually belong to a third city that is kind of controlled by these all-powerful. And that's just a conspiracy. This book is dense. It is amazing. And if you love science fiction, if you really love it for the science fiction part, this book has everything for that. It just has an idea where you just go, I just want to play with this idea for weeks. Now, that being said, the story that's hung on this idea is a good story. It is. You'll like the story. The story is not bad. As a genre novel, it's good. The pacing for the novel is slow. It's a very deliberate novel. It's 300 pages, and it's going to take you a while to get through the novel. It's detail oriented. It covers a short period of time in great detail. It has a lot. The relationship with the characters and kind of the way characters feel about things is like a big deal. The relationships are not perfect, which is always nice. It's always nice to see human and flawed relationships. It's nice to see people making mistakes. It does spend a lot of time on this idea, but the idea is so worth it. It's so worth it. So I can't speak to a denser kind of like plod through a plot line working in other genres, but in a police kind of detective crime story, it can really work. The book feels very dark, and the Eastern European setting, the area is it borders Turkey, like I think it's said at one point. So you know the general area that we're in. The location and kind of the words and the language can be an issue, right? I mean, you kind of have to really be into that. I can't speak to how well that's done. It seems flawless. There was nothing about this book where I went, really, this was a huge. I liked what the book did, and what I really like about it is how different these two cities are. That they were on different sides in World War II and stuff. I mean, it's just crazy. That's mind-blowing to me, that these two cities that share a location could have taken different sides in a world war. Like, it's so great. One of them, I believe, is being boycotted by the United States, and the other one is not. It's so crazy. It's so nuts. And that's wonderful. It's a great ride that way. So it's good that way. This is a book that you really gotta want, though. You really gotta sit down and go, I'm gonna take my time with this. I'm gonna savor it, and I'm gonna think about it a lot. I went to work and just told people the plot line was just like, which, by the way, I've not spoiled this plot line. I've given you a very surface view of what is going on. There's so much more that happens in this book. But I went to work and just told people about these cities and was just like, how is this a thing? Like, it's so good, so good. So I would strongly, I would suggest this as, again, for the premise alone. It's so worth it for the premise that's kind of shot into this, and the way that this novel lays it out, and how absolutely committed Mieville is to the world he has set up. There's something very beautiful about that level of commitment to something so strange. So yes, this was the Hugo Award winner. It tied in 2010. The other book had better be amazing. I really want to see what tied this, because this really seems like the kind of thing that when it came out, somebody would read it and go, nothing else like that's coming out this decade. So yes, you could check out this book. It is, again, the City in the City by China Mieville, and 2010 Hugo Award winner. Available wherever fine books are sold, or you can call me up and I'll lend you my copy. I don't know if that's really gonna work. You can see, by the way, if you see the frayed cover here, what that means is I was reading this in the bath. Like, I was just camped out in a bathtub just reading this book. It was great for that. It was so good. So, that's our Hugo Award winner for this week. And next week it is going to be, I can look right here, it's sitting on A Fire Upon the Deep by Werner Vinge. So I will see you for that. And you guys take care. Thank you for watching. Bye, everybody.